Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn. In today's episode, we're talking about the 2024 NFL Draft Class Review of the New England Patriots. So, we're going to take a look at production, athleticism, and other statistical factors to determine how well the Patriots did in this particular draft class. To learn more about the evaluation process and the stuff that I do, you can check out my top 50 prospects video. Link is in the description. You can also check out some other draft review videos where I go over similar information as well. But the first place we have to start off is with the needs with the Patriots. And the Patriots have a lot of needs. This was not a very good football team. And the way the roster is constructed right now, they have a lot of players that are really not high end prospects from an NFL perspective. And they also have a lot of players that are also very old. So what you'll see on this chart right here is you'll see all the starting players prior to the draft for the Patriots coming into here. The one thing you'll see is the NFL positional AV is how they actually have performed. So this is what their approximate value score is for how they have performed on a per year basis. And then on the right hand side, you'll see the data grade. The data grade is essentially how they would have tested coming out of the draft. So that's essentially deals with like production, athleticism, physical metrics. All those things are boiled down into one number, which is what that number is to kind of tell you how well they tested pre-draft before they actually were drafted. And then the NFL positional AV is how they actually have performed in the NFL. Typically speaking, most long-term starters at various positions usually score 70 or higher when it comes to their data grade. As far as high quality outcomes, that's a different subject entirely, but what you really want are prospects that have a 70 or higher score. In terms of offensive needs, this is how the Patriots have tested so far in terms of their offensive data ranks. They definitely need a quarterback, wide receiver help, offensive line, running back, and even tight end is another area where they might consider addressing in this particular draft class. And then on the defensive side of the football, they do need help at edge, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Defensive tackle is one of their strongest areas, but offensively and defensively, they need a lot of assistance and help. And hopefully, this draft will fix those issues. But starting with the first pick of the 2024 NFL draft class for the Patriots, at pick number 3, they selected Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina. Now, his data grade or ceiling was 95.58 out of 100. Biggest factor raising it up was his age. He is a younger quarterback, and as a result, he has more potential to develop as a passer. So I know there's a lot of people that have criticized Drake May in terms of his ability as a passer, in terms of consistency. Some people have even compared him to Josh Allen. He's not as bad as Josh Allen was coming out in terms of his passing efficiency, which we're going to take a look at a little bit later. But the bottom line is he did have a very good data grade. He had a floor grade, which is the average AV for prospects who test like Drake May in the top 5 of 92.43. So this is basically the average score that you would expect out of a quarterback selected here. And then balanced grade deals with 94.04 out of 100. That marries the ceiling with the floor in terms of what you can expect out of a prospect like Drake May. The AV here, the pick AV, which is the average AV for a pick selected at 3, is 98.46, regardless of position. So what's expected from a top 3 pick is 98.46. And his data kind of suggests he might be closer to a 94.04. So he is a little bit of a risky prospect from a data perspective. Not exactly what you would expect to get at the third pick of the draft, but it's still, I would give it an A because of his overall data grade. Now, a couple things to talk about in terms of his data profile. The mobile quarterback score. This score takes a look at his ability as a rusher with the football. So this is sort of like a relative mobile score. It doesn't really deal with his athleticism or anything like that. It's just how he was used at North Carolina, and he did pretty well. His mobile ability, his ability to get yards with his feet, to get touchdowns, all those things was actually above average. He was in the 90 plus percentile in terms of this metric. So that's a good thing for May to kind of hang his hat on, I would say. And then, of course, when you get to his quarterback efficiency scores, this deals with his ability to not throw interceptions, his touchdown to interception ratio, his completion percentage. And taking a look at this area right here, his best passing efficiency score is 88.21, with a career score of 74.58. Now, when you look at the Pro Bowl average and the starter averages at the position, he's in line with the Pro Bowl and starter averages in that area. So he's not really an all-pro quarterback. It's not to say that that isn't necessarily possible, because we have seen some outliers here and there, like Brett Favre, for example. But for the most part, he tested like a Pro Bowl slash starter quarterback based on his overall data. Next up, we get to pick 37 and Jalen Polk, wide receiver out of Washington. Based on his data, he had an 81.55 data grade. His floor is 72.04, and his balance grade is 76.79 with a AV average here of 87.26. So this is another grade where the Patriots seem to have picked a player who's not exactly at the typical expectation of a prospect picked here. His overall pick grade would be a B. Now, why that is because of this. His production wasn't the best. His receiving market share was 49 percentile. His total offensive market share was 64, and then his touchdown market share was 59.05. When you look at the starter averages, the Pro Bowl averages, and the All-Pro averages, this is not exactly getting it done in terms of long-term outcomes for him. Doesn't mean that he can't be a starter, but it's just that he's producing a little bit less than expected from his data. Then, of course, you get to efficiency scores. He was pretty decent in terms of his efficiency. He was close to 70 percentile in terms of his TD percentage and was over the 70 percentile area in terms of his yards per reception. So he wasn't the most productive from a market share perspective, but he did do well in terms of his touchdowns per touch and yards per reception score. So essentially, if he played in a different offense with less competition around him, he might have produced more in that setting. Then, of course, you get to athleticism traits. He had an 84.54 explosion score with a 64.30 speed score. Didn't get any testing for his flexibility score, which essentially deals with the short shuttle and the three cone, change of direction skills. But this is pretty decent athleticism. It's nothing really spectacular. Most wide receivers do not need to be elite level athletes. They just need to be above average, and he hits all those areas that you're looking for there. And then, of course, when you get to adjusted production traits, so adjusted production takes a look at age, it takes a look at their strength of competition and the strength of team. So this essentially adjusts for the competition that he faced and for his other areas. And this is where he actually does shine pretty well. So despite the fact that his market share data wasn't the best, you can give him a little bit of a pass because of his level of competition and because of the strength of team and the strength of schedule. So this essentially is the metric that a lot of people, when people say, "Oh, well, he played at Washington, he had, Rome Odunze as a teammate, and he had Jalen McMillian as another prospect there." So when you look at that, you go, "Yeah, he did," and this adjusts for that. So based on this data, he does hit at least above the starter average. So all of this combined, I would suspect that Jalen Polk would be considered a long-term starter candidate. I think he doesn't quite have high quality outcomes. I mean, he possibly could, end up like a Pro Bowler or high-end kind of prospect in that way, but I think based on his overall data, I would say he's be closer to like a starter. I think that's what you should expect him to be. If he's better than that, that's sort of something that I can't really predict as much based on his data profile. Then, of course, we get to pick 68 and Caden Wallace, offensive tackle out of Penn State. His data grade was 78.79. His floor was 75.55 with a balanced grade of 77.17. Pick AV is 66.41. Overall pick grade would be a C. Based on his athleticism traits, he had above average explosiveness, above average speed, with slightly above average flexibility for his size. When you look at the all pro averages at the position, he doesn't quite have the same change of direction skills that's expected of a Pro Bowl all pro tackle or guard for that matter. But he does hit at least within the starter average area. So Wallace is a good prospect. He is somebody that I think, based on the depth chart right now, is going to be a starter for them. I'm excited to see how that kind of turns out, but that's kind of how he tested. I would say he'd overall would be a C. There are some concerns about his change of direction ability, but he probably has enough length to kind of deal with that, to kind of cheat a little bit, if you will. Then, of course, we get to pick 103 and Layden Robinson, offensive guard at Texas A&M. His data grade is 56.05. His floor grade is 58.47 with a balance grade of 57.26. Overall pick AV would be 49.42. and overall pick grade would be at F. So he was one of the first prospects in the Patriots draft that didn't really test that well. When you take a look at his athleticism traits, he had a 52 percentile explosion score with a 29 percentile speed score. Looking at the All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and starter averages at the position, he's nowhere near those averages. So it would be highly unlikely that he would become a long-term starter for them. But that was one of the first picks that was very kind of in terms of his overall profile. But that's just kind of how the draft is. Not every pick is going to be a winner, of course. Then, of course, you get to pick 110 and Javon Baker, wide receiver out of Central Florida. His data grade is 77.91 out of 100. His floor is 47.71. Balance grade is 59.81. And pick AV is 65.25 out of 100. Overall grade for him would be a C. Taking a look at his production traits, he had really good receiving market share, 61.76 in terms of total offensive market share, with 47.10 in terms of touchdown market share. So his market share is kind of the opposite of Jalen Polk. You know, when you look at his overall data, he's kind of like flipped to the other side. So he's more of a stretch the field type guy in terms of his production. You know, receiving yardage essentially is kind of the biggest thing. When you look at his efficiency scores, that shows up as well. 90 plus percentile in terms of his yards per reception. So he's a big play wide receiver, but his TD percentage is more so in the 60 percentile area. So not the biggest touchdown maker, but definitely really good in terms of stretching the field and getting plays like that down the field. And then when you look at his athleticism traits, 69 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 55 percentile in terms of speed. This is pretty much in line with what the starter averages are in terms of the position. So I don't really see any issues with his athleticism traits. And when you get to adjusted production, closer to like a starter average, above that area to maybe Pro Bowl average in terms of the fringe area. I know there's a lot of really big fans of Javon Baker. I'm one of them. I really like Javon Baker's film, but his data, it does have some concerns. You know, most of his production was against lesser competition at Central Florida. He definitely has some athleticism question marks because he didn't do the change of direction skills. And just overall, he's one of those prospects that doesn't have a perfect profile. You know, he doesn't hit every single metric that you're looking for him to hit, and as a result, he's a little bit more of a risk. But at this pick, at this area, I think it's well worth the investment if you get a guy that, based on film, does have really good route running ability. So I am excited about him on this in this particular draft, but there are risks associated with his profile. Then, of course, you get to pick 180 and Marcellus Dial, cornerback out of South Carolina. His data grade is 53.33. His floor is 39.42 with a balance grade of 46.32. Pick AV is 27.18, and overall pick grade would be an F. Taking a look at his production traits, he had really good interception and pass deflection data, so his ability to make plays on the football is pretty good at the position. When you look at athleticism traits, he had an 86 percentile explosion score, 60 percentile speed, with 17 percentile in terms of his flexibility or change of direction skills. So not the very stiff in terms of his testing, in terms of short shovel and three cone, which is a bit of a concern for a cornerback. And then when you get to his adjusted production, his pass score was in the 60 percentile area, and his age is a little bit on the older side. So I know people are tired of hearing about the age stuff, but it's just what the statistics say. Typically speaking, you want a player that at least has average age at the position or younger if you're expecting them to have a lot of really good long-term outcomes. So again, I don't just make up the age metric. The age metric is what it is. The statistics are what they are, and I'd be happy to send you all the age data if you really wanted it. If you just send a comment section below, send me your email on, like, say, Twitter, and I can send you all the age data. You can comb through it and you can pick it apart, and you'll get to the same conclusion that I had based on my data work. So then, of course, you get to pick 193 and Joe Milton III, quarterback out of Tennessee. His data grade is 40.30. His floor is 21.15. His balance grade is 30.72, and pick AV is 28.19, with an overall pick grade of an F. So this is a prospect that's very intriguing. I did a video on Joe Milton III earlier on this season, this draft season, if you will, before the draft. He has great mobile quarterback ability. When you look at his ability in that particular area, he does have that ability to make plays with his feet. And passing efficiency wise, he had one really good season where he was 83 percentile in terms of that, but his average or career data is 45 percentile. He tested very similar to Colin Kaepernick in terms of his overall passing efficiency data and mobile quarterback ability. So that could be a potential there, but I do think Drake May has a better all-around profile. So I don't see Joe Milton challenging Drake May for the starting spot. I don't see that happening. So because of that, I think Joe Milton would just kind of stay there and develop, and maybe he gets traded and breaks out somewhere else. And then, of course, we get to pick 231, the last pick of the draft for the Patriots, and Jaheim Bell, tight end out of Florida State. This is by far my favorite pick of the Patriots. He had a 96.74 data grade. Projected floor is 25.79. His balance grade is 61.27. And the pick AV is 7.34 with an overall pick grade of an A. Taking a look at his production traits, fantastic production across the board. 75 percentile in terms of receiving market share, 89 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. Those marks are very decent for the position. Then, of course, you get to efficiency traits, 88 percentile in terms of yards per reception. That's fantastic. 63.32 in terms of yards per reception. Fantastic as well. And then, well, no, 63.32 in terms of TD percentage, 88.71 in terms of yards per reception. And then when you get to athleticism traits, 80 percentile in terms of explosiveness with 89 percentile in terms of speed. So he has near elite athleticism traits for the position. And then when you get to his adjusted production traits, he's within the Pro Bowl averages and the starter averages of the position and almost at the All Pro averages of the area. So he's definitely a very unique tight end. So he's kind of like a pocket sized tight end, if you will, sort of an H-back move motion tight end. But I think in the same way that we've seen like a Brock Bowers go and these other sort of tight ends that are starting to emerge a little bit, he could be that next wave of those types of guys. So I'm excited to see what Jaheim Bell brings to the table. And I'm also excited about this Patriots class. So overall, my final grade for the Patriots would be a C. Did they meet all their roster needs? I would say yes and no. Did they draft good prospects? I'd say yes and no. The draft class will be defined by how well Drake May translates to the NFL level. I mean, this class was built to help him. They drafted multiple wide receivers. They drafted Jaheim Bell. They drafted multiple offensive linemen. So this draft is tailor-made to make a quarterback feel happy. That the team is not only did they draft him, but they're trying to put pieces around him to succeed. So I like this draft for that perspective. Are they the cleanest offensive prospects? No. Would it be nicer if the Patriots had like Rome Odunze and Drake May? Yeah, but again, they don't have that opportunity, if you will. So from that perspective, that's kind of the issue. Is Jalen Polk and Javon Baker? They have good data, but they don't have great data, and as a result, there's that question mark there about, okay, how are both these guys going to translate? Is one of them going to translate? Are none of them going to translate? Their data does have a little bit of risk to it, and as a result, you're kind of wondering, okay, what's going to happen here? But it is a very promising draft. So if these picks do hit, a lot of them hit data grades where they do have the ability to become long-term starters, and this could be a very interesting future for the New England Patriots. Probably the first future away from the Tom Brady and the Bill Belichick era that actually it feels different, if you will, because of that. So I'm excited to see where they go from here with this. But with all that stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Jim Coburn. You can follow my other work at patreon.com/jcoburn. You can also check out my X, formerly known as Twitter account, at Geometrics. And also, as well, consider purchasing the 2024 NFL Draft Analytics Guide. A link is in the description. That guide has multiple profiles on pretty much all the players that I talked about today is in that guide. So learn about the prospects, learn more about my process with this, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.